Man, a few weeks ago, I told you I'd take June off, but I took a break from my break in the middle of June to fly out, and there was some pastors that flew out to meet in D.C. with the White House Faith Office. So the people who run the Faith Office and some of that group just wanted to meet and kind of share what they were doing in the nation, kind of a briefing on that. So we flew out, met with them. It was great, just kind of hearing what their heart is and what's going on. But in the process of that flying back, I actually flew back more convinced than ever before that if we're going to see revival, it's going to happen through the local church and local communities. We spend so much time reading articles and paying attention to the national news, and I think we should. I think we need leaders. I think we need Christians in all levels of government and all levels of leadership. I think we need to be paying attention, of course, what's happening nationally. But I think sometimes we get so focused on that I think we lose the concept that real transformation in a nation is going to happen when the local church is actually the local church. When the local church is the local church in a local city, a local community, a local region. My heart has been alive for revival for 30 years now. I was 19 years old when Bill Johnson and Reddy came into our lives and kind of opened up the concept of revival. Like God would move, a harvest would come in. Supernaturally, a harvest would begin to be brought in, cities transformed and culture transformed, and the church being awakened to a greater passion and love for Jesus. Like the concept of revival came into my life, but I'm more and more convinced that if we're going to see revival, it is going to be when the local church actually acts like the local church in regions. I think, I don't say this self-deprecating. I'm a pretty simple, it's not shallow, but I'm a pretty simple preacher and pretty simple leader because I believe that we've overcomplicated things. We overcomplicate things. I don't think it's that complicated. You want to see revival? Then we need people to be in love with Jesus and go fully engaged, call God in their life. I don't think it's that complicated. And so much of what we do, it is simple. I remember, I think it was maybe year 2 of the church, we were meeting at the high school, and then a couple times a year we'd have to meet in the cafeteria of the high school. And the Sacramento Bee showed up one day, just kind of unannounced, came on a Sunday and said, we're doing an article on the church. We'd grown quite a bit and things were happening. So they said, we're going to do an article of the church. And we're like, yeah, that's fine, And so they wrote an article, and it was actually a really positive article, interestingly enough. Sacramento Bee, which is such a conservative publication. They tell the people that are laughing are the only ones that read it. And so it was actually a very encouraging, kind article. It wasn't bad at all. But so they come on Sunday. Monday, the article comes out. There was like a little, it's front page. The article wasn't front page, but a little thumbnail up top was front page. So Tuesday, we get in our staff meeting, and we're like, let's read the article together, everybody. So we're sitting down there. I start reading the article, and it gets to the part where he's going to talk about my sermon. And he goes, and the preacher got up and spoke a homespun message, homespun sermon. And I've never used that word before. I don't even know what it means. So I'm in with our whole staff. I'm like, homespun? I wonder what that means. So I quickly get my phone out. What does homespun mean? Homespun. Simple and unsophisticated. It's like, I don't know if is that a positive? That kind of sounds like a backhanded, But you know what I realized? I'm totally okay with that. I legitimately, I don't think this stuff's that complicated. I think we try to complicate things so much. You know how we're going to reach cities and see revival? Every believer fully engaged. Every believer prays, serves, gives, embraces the call of God in their life. Do you know what the Pareto principle is? If you're in business at all, leadership, you would have come across the 80-20 principle. The principle is named after an Italian economist, Vilfredo Pareto, who in the late 19th century observed this distribution in the context of wealth and land ownership in Italy. So he just realized in late 19th century that 20% of people own 80% of the wealth in the land. But in the 1940s, a management consultant took that principle, it's not a law, but took that principle and began to apply it actually to leadership and business. And so the Pareto principle is the observation that most things in life are not distributed evenly. So in other words, they would say, well, 20% of the people do 80% of the work. 20% of the workers produce 80% of the result. 20% of the customers create 80% of the revenue. 20% of the bugs cause 80% of the crashes. 20% of the features cause 80% of the usage. You get the point. And so there's this 80-20 principle, and you can see it in the church as well. It's not everything lines up perfectly with 20%, but when you look at church, these are church attenders. These are not people that just call themselves Christians. These are people that actually attend church. It's lower in some and higher in some, but 20% read their Bible, 20% give, 20% serve, 20% share their faith, 20% disciple. It's the same kind of principle. And I think at some level in America, we've just accepted this 80-20 principle in the church. And I just refuse to accept it. I just refuse to accept it. I thought if we accept this principle, that, well, 20% of the people are going to actually be the ones that are passionate, are actually going to be involved in small groups, or actually love Jesus fully, or show up to prayer meetings, or worship, whatever else. No wonder we're not impacting cities. No wonder we're not seeing revival. Because do you know that the Bible actually describes this right here as a body? We're a body. We all have a part to play in the body. Now listen, can a body live at 20% function? Yeah. I mean, if your lungs only have 20% function, can you live? Yes. If your heart is only operating at 20%, can you live? Yes. You're just going to be extremely weak and ineffective. Right? You're alive, but you're very ineffective and you're extremely weak. So when we somehow accept the fact that there's this Pareto principle and we kind of look at the church, and if you're a church leader or a church pastor in the nation, you would know this. I could give you all the stats that talk about how many people are actually discipling other people, how many people are actually actively serving, or how many are giving, or how many share their faith, or how many read their Bible. And it's not all exactly 20, but it's a similar principle. And when I was in D.C. flying back, I'm like, listen, we can talk about all this national stuff all we want. If we're going to see revival, it's because the church is actually being the church in a local community. It's that every believer is loving Jesus with their entire heart and then is fully engaged in the call of God on their life and is walking with other people for them to see the same thing. That's homespun. Right? That's the homespun concept right there. And I'm thinking, think about this. Think about the impact the church has had in the nation operating with 20% lung capacity and 20% heart. I mean, think about that. Think about the impact that the church would have. I actually don't think it'll probably ever be 100%. I actually think there is an 80-20 principle. I just think it's 80% fully engaged and 20% new believers or immature or whatever else, right? There should always be people in your church that aren't fully engaged or aren't giving or aren't serving. That's just the nature of family. But the goal is extremely simple for me. I want to see this. If somebody said, what's success look like for you with the people in your church? Every single person wholeheartedly in love with Jesus. More in love with Jesus next year than they were this year. Literally in July of next year, you would say, I love Jesus more now than I ever have. My heart is more on fire for God than it's ever been. So a people that love Jesus with their whole heart, a people that know the call of God on their individual life and are fully engaged in it, and that are walking with other people to do the same. I'm gonna skip over the love God with all your heart, but this is what God's after. You're never really gonna change the world outside of loving God. You're never gonna have a healthy marriage. You're never gonna be free. Everything in your life connects back to knowing the love of God and loving Him. You want a healthy marriage? Then I just did a marriage. This is my talk with people in marriage. This is my wedding ceremony, one of the points. If you want a healthy marriage, then make sure Jesus is at the center of your life. Make sure Jesus is at the center of your life. Pursue Him with everything you have. Pursue Him with everything you have, and you guys will be okay. The problem in your marriage comes when you're not loving God with all of your heart. We guard what we love and we sacrifice for what we love. It's very hard. Listen, if you're going to change the world, it's going to require real sacrifice, but that's got to come from a place of love. I'll sacrifice for love in ways that I will not sacrifice for duty or obligation. So we have to get the goal is to get people who love Jesus with all that they have. And that comes from encountering His love for you. Why do we want to just set aside time on Sunday nights once a month just to encounter God? Because when I encounter His love for me, my natural result is I want to love Him. So we need to love God. But here's where I really think we're going to see transformation is we've got to get to a point where every believer, the local church is the local church because every believer is fully engaged in the call of God on your life. You have a call on your life. Every single one of you has a call of God on your life. I'm more convinced than ever before that we are most alive, most thriving, most fulfilled when we're actually fully engaged in what God's called us to. I actually have my youth pastor years ago used to tell us as teenagers. He goes, he said, if you think God's boring, he said, God's not boring, you're boring. There's a concept that Christianity, when you don't jump fully in, following God when you don't jump all the way in is actually pretty boring. Do you know the story that I used to tell? My early days were mainly all with teenagers, preaching to them. So with teenagers, you're just trying to figure out how to keep their attention with stories. And you're telling stories, well, actually I still do with adults, but you're telling stories to try to connect a truth. It was always, you take the text of Scripture and try to connect it to the text of life so that they'll remember. And so one of the things was that I was trying to call teenagers to wholeheartedly go in with God, and that your life will actually be extremely dull, or Christianity is extremely dull if it's not an all-in concept. So I would tell a story about going cliff jumping, and we used to go cliff jumping all the time as teenagers, and in Redding where it gets really hot, and so there was this one place called Hog's Back. It's in Red Bluff. This is where I grew up. Red Bluff, Hog's Back. It was this creek, this bend in this creek, and they had these it was like these 40-foot cliffs, 20-foot cliffs, these different, and then we would go, it was this deep area, and we'd jump off these cliffs. So one of the girls, when I was a senior, one of the girls goes, I want to go with you one time. We're like, all right, let's go. So we take her out there, and it's like you drive 45 minutes away, and then it's like this 30-minute hike down to this creek. You get down there, and we're all jumping off the cliffs, and then finally she says, all right, I'm going to go jump off. Her name was Amy. She goes, I'm going to go jump off the cliff. We're like, all right. She goes up to like the 40-footers. She's standing up there, and she puts her toes on the edge, and she goes, all right, I'm going to jump. We're all down there. We're like, jump, Amy, you can do it. She goes, all right, here I go. And then didn't move. And we're like, you can do it. She goes, all right, I'm going to jump. Here I go. And she goes, I don't know what's going on. My legs won't move. And so I tell this story a lot longer with teenagers. That's half my sermon when I'm preaching to teenagers. But we're down there. And then finally, after a while, we just were like, all right, whatever. And she stood with her like toes hanging over the edge. And about every 15 minutes, she'd be like, all right, I'm going to jump. And we kind of all look up. And she's like, all right, I don't know what's going on. She stood up there for 2 hours. Until finally we're like, Amy, we have to go. And so she's like, all right. And she just walked away, never jumping. And I would tell these teenagers, there's something called the point of no return. Do you want to know why cliff jumping is fun? Because there's something called the point of no return. It's an invisible line right here, right? And you haven't actually crossed that point. Like cliff jumping is not fun when you just come and stand here. Like everybody's like, dude, cliff jumping is unbelievable. It's so exhilarating, the best thing I've ever done. And then they just stand there the whole time. You know, no, cliff jumping is funny because you cross a point of no return is the point. It was what I would tell these teenagers. You go, and you know you cross a point of no return because when you step off, you can't call time out. And be like, whoa, this is a little bit more intense than I thought, right? But, and so I felt my main mandate with teenagers, literally, was just to kick them. I just want to kick teenagers off of this cliff. Like, go follow. I'm like, listen, if this is your version of Christianity, it is 100% boring. This isn't what it's supposed to be. Christianity is like, I'm all in. I've crossed the point of no return. I don't just show up on Wednesday nights or Sunday mornings and be like, I don't know what, God's kind of boring. I'm like, God's not boring. You're boring. Like Christianity is like, go all in on this thing. And you know what's funny is, I'm now realizing that's still my mandate. This is the only thing I want to do with people. It's like, listen, just get off the cliff. Stop playing it safe with the Lord and kind of just showing up on a Sunday morning and not doing go. Dude, follow it. You are so alive when you are fully engaged in what God has called you to do. When I know this is what God has called me to do. Can you imagine if it wasn't 10% of people that were actually pursuing what God had called them to do wherever they are in the city, but 80% of the body of Christ in a city is praying, is seeking God, and is fully engaged in all that He's told them to do? I think part of the issue that we've run into in society, and it's really fascinating to me, we outsource a lot of stuff in our life. We don't even realize it. 200 years ago, the Industrial Revolution came in. So around 1825, the Industrial Revolution. Before that, almost everything was done in your home. Like almost everything was done, the center of society 200 years ago would have been the home. That's where economics was based. That's where education was based. That's where commerce was based. That's where, you would prepare your own food. You'd make your own clothes. You'd educate your children. Even locally in that region is where you would distribute things. There wasn't a national distribution network. It was all local distribution, right? This 200 years ago. Then the Industrial Revolution comes in, and families begin to outsource things. So they're outsourcing their education, they're outsourcing food preparation, they're outsourcing clothes, they're outsourcing distribution, they're outsourcing all of that, child care, things like that. So we know that. But it just continues, even in the smallest of things. We just outsource things now. Things that you did 10 years ago, you don't do anymore. This is just 10 years ago, let alone when I was, we don't buy groceries anymore. We outsource that. Somebody buys groceries for me, drives them to my house, drops them off at my door. That would have been unheard of 20 years ago. Right? But we do that. We outsource. There's everything. Guys, I was raised to change my own oil in my car. I can change oil in a car. I can drive my car up on little ramps and get under there and change the oil filter and drain it. I can do that, but I don't want to do that. I go through Jiffy Lube. We outsource that stuff. It's little things. There used to be great pride in keeping my grass green and getting all the right fertilizer and all the right whatever. I just pay a company now. They just come in. They just do it for me. You know one of the stupid things? Guys, listen, we could go through this list. Christmas lights or all that stuff. But you know one of the stupid things? My kids, if you're in your 40s and up, you'll appreciate this. 30s and unders, you're not going to know what I'm talking about. But one of the things that I think my kids have missed in life is making their own mixtape. Was there a better experience than having your cassette tape in your radio/cassette player waiting for the song you've been waiting to get on your mixtape? And all of a sudden you start hearing it in the DJ and boom, and half of them, the DJ was still talking on it, but you're just like, oh, I recorded, I got it. And to be able to put together your own mixtape, oh man, you'd give it to your girlfriend, and it was just like the whole thing. Man, mixtapes were something of pride. My kids don't know, Spotify just curates playlists for them. I know this is the stupid example. We just outsource. Listen, we outsource everything. Listen, guys, you cannot outsource the call of God on your life. We're not going to change cities if you think you're going to outsource the call of God on your life. Can I tell you this real quick? You ready for this? The fivefold ministry: pastor, evangelist, preacher, teacher, apostle, prophet. Not preacher, teacher. There's no preacher in the fivefold. Apostle, prophet, pastor, evangelist, teacher. You know the fivefold is not there so you can outsource your call. This is part, okay, I'm going to say some stuff that I said I wasn't going to say at 10:30, but we want evangelists to come in so we can outsource our call to evangelize. We want hey, if we could get an evangelist to come in and put on a crusade and put on something, then maybe I don't have to evangelize my neighbor. You can't outsource the call of God in your life. We're not here to, we got to say, no, I want to take ownership for the call of God in my life. And we just outsource everything. I don't want to hang Christmas lights, so I outsource Christmas lights. I don't want to do this, so I do that. But listen, if we're going to change cities, it means that people can't outsource the call of God. You have a call of God on your life. God wants to use you exactly where you are as part of his plan in the earth for revival. It is the local church being the local church in local communities that is actually going to see transformation in a nation. And then I'll just end with this. You got to just go walk with people and help them discover the same thing. Discipleship isn't that hard. Find somebody and say, can I walk with you? And go, well, what's the goal? Here's the goal. I want you to love Jesus more next year than you did this year. And I want you to discover what God's calling you to, and I want you to go do it. And then I want to be your biggest encourager, and I want to challenge you and support you and walk with you. I don't know. We were doing this house of discipleship thing, and this is a whole nother sermon, but I don't know if we really understand the level of impact your life has on another human being when you just take time to walk with them. Do you know one of the guys that I would give credit for my spiritual walk with the Lord right now? Is a guy that was in my life when I was 17 years old. A guy named Kurt Fry. And Kurt Fry was an intern when I was a senior in high school. And he just decided to walk with me. I remember as a 17-year-old, I remember when he would show up to my basketball games. He played baseball too, and I remember he would go and we would go down and he would just, soft pitches where you sit and just soft toss somebody who's hitting a ball into a fence. He would go and just pitch to me. I'd go play video games at his house. He would just walk with me. Listen, I legitimately look back, I would say, hey, over the however many years of going after God, Kurt Fry was so unbelievably instrumental in my life because he just walked with me. He just came alongside me and believed in me and was available to me and encouraged me. And it wasn't He was a few years older than I was. He wasn't that much older than me. But my point is this, is I don't know if you really realize the level of impact your life can have on another individual if you just take time and you just walk with them and you just love on them and you just say, here's the goal. Hey, listen, you know what I'm trying to do? I'm trying to love Jesus with all my heart, and I'm trying to fully engage the call of God in my life. Banning just kicked me off the cliff. And so, can I help you do the same thing? Homespun. Like, this is just super simple, not complicated. If we want to see revival, then the church has to be the church. And no wonder we're not seeing the harvest come in, and no wonder our nation's in the state it is. If the church is operating at 20% lung capacity and 20% heart function, I'm surprised we've done as much as we have. Stand up with me. I am praying that this would be a season where the Lord provokes you in the best of ways. Do you know what I believe the first thing that's going to happen with revival? It's going to be an awakening in the church, and I believe it's going to be an awakening around love for Jesus and the call of God in your life. That God is going to awaken a greater passion for him, and he's going to awaken the understanding that I've got a call in my life. What am I doing about that? Am I moving towards it? Wherever I may be, whatever I may be doing, am I actually fully engaged?